Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a tale of terror. We're talking about a killer that's been haunting humanity for millennia. It's not a monster under your bed. It's not a serial killer on the loose. It's something far more insidious. It's a microscopic murderer that's claimed more lives than all wars and natural disasters combined. Meet Mycobacterium tuberculosis, the cause of tuberculosis, affectionately known as the White Death. This is the Michael Jordan of diseases, the Meryl Streep of pathogens. It's been killing it literally for thousands of years, and it's still going strong. Tuberculosis has been the star of the show in the theatre of human suffering for centuries. Despite all our medical advancements, TB is still out there. It's still killing people. So strap in, folks, because we're about to take a journey through time and space, tracing the path of this microscopic menace from ancient history to the present day. All right, let's hop into our time machine and take a trip back to ancient history. I'm talking about thousands of years ago. Tuberculosis isn't some Johnny-come-lately in the world of diseases. It's the cranky old neighbour who's been yelling at kids to get off his lawn since before lawns were invented. Archaeologists have found evidence of TB in human remains dating back to 3000 BCE. While our ancestors were figuring out how to build pyramids and invent the wheel, TB was already perfecting its craft of making people miserable. They found TB in Egyptian mummies, which means even pharaohs weren't immune to this democratic destroyer. By 460 BCE, it had made its way to Greece, where Hippocrates described a disease that sounds suspiciously like TB. He called it phthisis, which roughly translates to wasting away. As civilizations rose and fell, TB remained a constant companion. It hitched a ride with traders, explorers, and conquerors, spreading across continents like a viral video. By the time the Middle Ages rolled around, TB had established itself as a global superpower. It was the disease equivalent of the British Empire. It had colonies everywhere. TB was going global before it was cool, and unfortunately its grand tour was far from over. During the Renaissance, as art and science flourished, TB continued to cast its long shadow over humanity. In the 17th century, it was known as the White Plague, due to the pale appearance of its victims. The Industrial Revolution brought people into crowded cities, creating perfect conditions for TB to thrive. By the 19th century, sanatoriums were established as places where TB patients could rest and hopefully recover. The early 20th century saw significant medical advancements, but TB remained a formidable foe. The discovery of antibiotics in the mid-20th century brought new hope in the fight against TB. Today, TB is still a global health challenge, but ongoing research and treatment efforts continue to make progress. Organizations around the world are working tirelessly to eradicate this ancient disease once and for all. With continued dedication and innovation, we can hope for a future where TB is nothing more than a distant memory. Fast forward to the 17th and 18th centuries in Europe. TB decided it was time for its glow-up. It wasn't content with being just another disease. It wanted to be a star, and boy did it shine. This was TB's golden age, its time to sparkle. It became known as the Great White Plague. During this period, TB was responsible for a quarter of all deaths in Europe. 1 in 4 people were being taken out by this microscopic menace. Rich or poor, young or old, TB didn't discriminate. It was the great equalizer, the ultimate socialist. Despite its deadly nature, TB somehow became fashionable. The consumptive look became all the rage. Pale skin, flushed cheeks, bright eyes, and a thin frame were considered the height of beauty. While society was busy romanticizing TB, the disease was busy doing what it did best, killing people. Section 4, Airborne Menace, How TB Spreads. Now let's talk about how this microscopic mastermind manages to spread its reign of terror. Tuberculosis, or TB, is a highly infectious disease caused by the bacterium Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Spoiler alert, it's not through handshakes or dirty doorknobs. You won't catch TB from touching surfaces or through casual contact. No, TB has a far more insidious method. It goes airborne, folks. This means it can spread through the air we breathe. When someone with active TB coughs, sneezes, or even just talks, they release tiny droplets containing the bacteria into the air. These droplets are invisible to the naked eye but are packed with infectious potential. These droplets are so small they can hang around in the air for hours. Imagine walking into a room where someone with TB was present hours ago. Those droplets could still be floating around, waiting to be inhaled. You could walk into a room hours after an infected person has left and still catch TB. It's a chilling thought, but that's the reality of airborne diseases. In some cases, all it takes is a single bacterium to cause an infection. One single bacterium. This makes TB incredibly efficient at spreading. It's like the world's worst lottery. The odds are not in your favor if you're exposed to these airborne droplets. Now, before you all start panicking, it's important to note that not everyone infected with TB bacteria becomes sick. The human body has a remarkable defense system. Most people's immune systems can fight off or contain the bacteria. The immune system can trap the bacteria in a dormant state, preventing it from causing illness. However, for those with weakened immune systems, the elderly or young children, TB can be a ticking time bomb. Their bodies may not be able to contain the bacteria, leading to active disease. When it does become active, it primarily affects the lungs, causing symptoms like severe coughing, chest pain, and coughing up blood. These symptoms can be debilitating and require immediate medical attention. Understanding how TB spreads is crucial for prevention. By raising awareness and taking appropriate precautions, we can reduce the risk of transmission and protect vulnerable populations. Section 5, Desperate Measures, Historical TB Treatments. Now, let's talk about how our ancestors tried to fight this airborne assailant. Spoiler alert, it wasn't pretty. One popular treatment was bloodletting. Then there was the fresh air treatment. Doctors would send patients to the mountains or the seaside, believing the change in air would cure them. Some doctors recommended a diet of raw meat and whiskey. Others suggested horseback riding. There were even those who believed that TB could be cured by touching the king. As the 19th century rolled around, a new treatment emerged, the sanatorium. These were special hospitals where TB patients were isolated from the general population. The idea was to provide rest, good nutrition and fresh air. Patients would spend months or even years in these facilities, lying in beds that were often pushed out onto porches or balconies. Sanatoriums became so popular that they spawned their own architecture style and even influenced fashion. But despite all these efforts, TB continued to run rampant. Section 6. Koch's discovery, Unveiling the Enemy. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to the man, the myth, the legend, Robert Koch, a pioneer whose work would forever change the landscape of medical science. In 1882, Koch did something revolutionary. He made a discovery that would alter the course of history. He identified the bacterium responsible for tuberculosis, a disease that had plagued humanity for centuries. It was like he pulled back the curtain and revealed the Wizard of Oz, exposing the true culprit behind the deadly disease. Before Koch's groundbreaking discovery, people thought TB was hereditary or caused by bad air. These misconceptions led to ineffective treatments and widespread fear. Koch's work was like turning on the lights in a dark room, illuminating the path to understanding and combating the disease. Koch's method for identifying the TB bacterium was nothing short of genius. He developed a technique that would become a cornerstone in microbiology. He developed a new staining technique that made the bacteria visible under a microscope, a feat that was previously unimaginable. For the first time, scientists could actually observe the bacteria that had been terrorizing humanity for millennia. This was a monumental leap forward. Koch went on to develop methods for growing the bacteria in the lab, which was a critical step in understanding its life cycle and behavior. This was crucial for studying the disease and testing potential treatments. It opened new avenues for research and experimentation. Koch's work opened the floodgates for TB research, inspiring countless scientists to join the fight against this deadly disease. Koch's discovery was the first real step towards fighting TB effectively. It laid the foundation for the development of treatments and vaccines. The tide was turning, but the battle was far from over. Koch's legacy lives on as we continue to fight against tuberculosis, armed with the knowledge he provided. Section 7, Antibiotics, A New Hope Against TB. Now, let's fast forward to the 1940s. The world had just gone through another global conflict, but a different kind of war was about to heat up. The war against TB, and humanity was about to get a new superweapon: antibiotics, specifically a little miracle drug called streptomycin. Streptomycin was discovered by a team led by Selman Waxman in 1943. Streptomycin was a game changer. For the first time in human history, we had a drug that could actually kill the TB bacteria. The results were nothing short of miraculous. People who would have been doomed to a slow, painful death were suddenly getting better. Sanatoriums started emptying out, but TB started developing resistance to streptomycin. Scientists had to up their game, developing new antibiotics and using combinations of drugs to treat TB. For a while it seemed like we had TB on the run, but TB wasn't done with us yet.